difference because I went through the Marxist communist thing too, as Brother Bilal, Imam Bilal did. And a Marxist wrote a book about Malcolm X, socialist. His name is Manning Marwell. He called his biography of Malcolm, actually it's his graduate students, but he put his name on it, A Life of Reinvention. And so he's basically saying that Malcolm was the agent of the changes and stages that he went through, and that he was faking it. He was fake. And you know, some people wouldn't accept that, but I'm telling you, that's what it is. As a Muslim, we say that Malcolm wasn't the agent, Allah Ta'ala was the agent. And Allah moved Malcolm. And Allah transformed Malcolm. And Allah transformed a lot of us. You know, and the reason Malcolm is so powerful because we all see ourselves in Malcolm. Now, see, I'm one of, at the time, I have 6 brothers and sisters. Actually, I have 7. But the 8th one came after my mother died and my father remarried. But from my mother, there's 7 of us. And she raised us by herself. You're a single mom, you got 1 or 2 and you're going crazy. What if you had 6 or 7? And when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, I see his mother trying to raise 6 or 7 children by herself, and how the system drove her crazy, and how the system was breaking down my own mother. And she passed away before they could finish the job. So, you know, that's our history. We see ourselves in Malcolm. Recently, due to an unfortunate set of circumstances, I'm going texting back and forth with somebody, and they said, you know, yada, 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 quoting Malcolm, and then Malcolm talked about burning the house down. And this person said, you might find that a bit radical. I said, listen, I'm 68 years old, and over the course of a long life, I tried to burn down a whole lot of houses. Because that anger that was in Malcolm was in me. And I said also, there's a metaphor, when the cops came to arrest me, the people that gave me the matches was nowhere to be found. So if I'm not inclined to burn down houses these days, you take the matches and go burn it down. Because we did our share of burning. That's right. And our institutions suffered as a result of it. And we was doing it for you and your people and your struggle, and almost broke the rule. Say you don't give a D about the sacrifices we were making. And that's real. All right, that's real. This is real talk. You could care less. You're just waiting for us to make a mistake so you can pounce on it and try to ruin us. That's what you're doing. And that's real talk. You know, I made notes on the paper. I look down once in a while. So, you know, a lot of us went through that communist, Muslim communist thing because we were searching for a way to reform our communities. Because we saw what the drugs do. We saw what the alcohol does. We saw our friend's fathers, who was the nicest guy on earth, till he got drunk on Friday night after he got his paycheck. Then we seen him change from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde. We saw that damage. We saw what happened in our time, what happened to all these waves of brothers that went to Vietnam. Now, a lot of people, they try to explain the breakdown of the black family and all. You want to explain it? No, I happened in Vietnam. That's how it happened. Because all them young brothers, you look at it, up to 1960, 80% of all African American homes were male-headed. 1980, almost 70% were female-headed. What happened between 1960 and 1980? Vietnam. Or what happened in Vietnam? Brother went, he was either killed or maimed. He came back as an alcoholic or a junkie. All right, that's what happened. And we saw that. We saw that. So we tended to hate this country. That was the tendency. And when you hate something, you want to destroy it. We want to destroy it. So when we heard about communism, we heard about this or that revolutionary struggle, it resonated. It resonated with us. But as we lived life, like Imam Sundiata said, he didn't understand what Imam Abu Qadir was saying. But as he lived life and experienced things, he began to understand and respect. You know, we came through a path that wasn't the nation. And briefly it was, I took Shahada in a masjid affiliated with, at that time, it was called the World Community of Al-Islam in the West, under the community of Imam Zaid Muhammad. Then I went to Hajj. Basically, we went on the bus, the car. You could do it back then, 1979. We went to Medina University, and there were some brothers there. They jumped all over us. Like, Imam Zaid Muhammad is this and he's that, and you know, I was traumatized. They were so negative. Like, that's my Imam. And then I got negative. And my wife was going to leave me. Because she said, if Imam Zaid Muhammad go to Africa, I'm going with him. You can stay here, your angry self.
Alhamdulillah.
She laughing because it's true. Anyway, but I was traumatized, so read this, read that, and as a result, I became very antagonistic to Imam Zaid Muhammad. You know what we used to call him? We used to call him, A'udhu Billah, Wobbly Deen Muhammad.
Wow.
Wobbly Deen Muhammad. And it wasn't until I got some sense, I went overseas and studied this religion. One of the first things I did when I came back, I went to the masjid, apologized. In New Haven, Connecticut, Imam Abdul Karim Hassan. I think his brother is still the Imam in Los Angeles.
No, AK, he's down there,
I went and personally apologized. And anything that I could do for that masjid, I did. Because I realized it's one thing to be angry, but it's another thing to act on your anger. So when the Prophet said, لا تغضب ويردده مرارا يقول لا تغضب, don't become angry. All you read the commentary, it doesn't mean don't become angry. Imam Shafi'i said if something happens that should anger you and you don't become angry, you're a donkey. But it means don't act out of your anger. Don't act out of your anger. And so I see the time's winding up for Maghrib. I'm going to say this in case the time runs out. One of the common things that unites Hajj, Malik, Shahbaz, Malcolm X, and Imam Abu Qadir Amin, they conquered their anger. They conquered their anger. They conquered their anger. And following them, a lot of brothers and sisters have been able to conquer their anger. And once you conquer your anger, number one, you can appreciate people for who they are. When you're angry, you can't appreciate people. But once you calm down, you can begin to rationally assess a person and what they're doing and what they represent. That's the first thing. The second thing, once you conquer your anger, you can start building stuff. You can start building. That's why Imam Bilal kept repeating. And you can start building institutions. That's something Malcolm understood. Because Malcolm was shaped by people that were shaped by institutions. Malcolm didn't come out of a vacuum. Malcolm's father and mother were an integral part, not a fringe, tangential, were an integral part of an institution called the United Negro Improvement Association under the leadership of Marcus Garvey. And Marcus Garvey was influenced by a Muslim named Dusay Muhammad. And his newspaper, he had Muslim writers. He had Mufti Muhammad Sadiq. And he had Dusay Muhammad writing articles about Islam in his paper. And Malcolm's mother was one of the lead writers in Garvey's paper. She was an extremely well-educated woman from Grenada in the Caribbean. She never lost her West Indian accent. So, we see ourselves in Malcolm. And a lot of times we talk about, some people get stuck on the anger period. Whether it was irrighteous anger as Satan or righteous anger as young Malcolm. That's an integral part of who he was. You can't divorce that. But Malcolm was always a builder. Malcolm built the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. Malcolm got leading African American writers, some who took Shahada like Sonia Sanchez, to write for that paper. Malcolm was instrumental in developing a whole lot of masajid. You could count them, because they had numbers. Number 6, number 7, temple number 10, temple number 11, temple number 12, 13, 14, 15, from all over the East Coast.
Mosque number 54 is in L.A.
Mosque number 54 is in L.A. Because it's out here west. It took a long time to get out here. Temple number 1's in Detroit, right? Number 2 in Chicago.
26 was in San Francisco.
Yeah, it took a long time to get out to the West Coast. 15 is in Spokane, Washington. No. But in conclusion, there's a whole lot to be said. We're part of a history. We're part of a history. That history is rooted in the diaspora of the African people. And they call it the Black Atlantic. Malcolm's mother was part of that. Malcolm's father was part of that. Dusay Muhammad was part of that. Marcus Garvey was part of that. Elijah Muhammad was part of that. And the first phase was epitomized by the Nation of Islam. I say epitomized because it had its roots in the Moorish Science Temple. It had its roots, even though Garvey wasn't a professed Muslim, but it had its roots in the UNIA. It had its roots in the intellectual contributions of Edward Blyden, who probably was a Muslim. It's a historical debate. But it had its culmination in Imam Abu Qadir. Because if the nation epitomized that first phase, that was called the first resurrection, and then Imam Warthaddin Muhammad and getting rid of that preparatory stuff. Some of y'all know what that preparatory stuff was, like Dr. Yaqub, the head black scientist, and the mothership, and all that stuff. So Imam Warthaddin Muhammad got rid of that stuff, and he formalized the Islam that was, you could say, informal in the nation. And that was the second resurrection. But the second was rooted in the first. And the first was rooted in the realities of the black diaspora. Then Imam Abu Qadir al-Amin was the beginning of the third resurrection. And Dr. Jackson wrote a whole book about that. Dr. Sherman Jackson. Islam and the Black American, the coming of the third resurrection. As that's when that history that's rooted in the African diaspora, in the Black Atlantic, that comes through those phases of Elijah, and those are phases of Malcolm, and those phases of Imam Warthaddin Muhammad. Imam Abu Qadir was a student of Imam Warthaddin Muhammad, probably one of his most brilliant students. Another brilliant student, Imam Fahim Shuaib. These are brilliant students of Imam Warthaddin Muhammad. Imam Abu Qadir, in making all of these connections with the wider community. That's the third resurrection. There will be no real rootedness for all of those Syrians that Imam Sundiata met in Las Vegas, and the Egyptian and the Palestinians, and the Bosnians, and the Yemenis. None of them will have any deep connection with this land, with this land and the history of Islam in this land, until their respective histories are joined to the roots that are constituted by those Muslims whose roots are rooted in the Black Atlantic and the experience of the Africans in diaspora in the so-called New World. So Imam Abu Qadir is a next phase from Malcolm. And now we are here to complete that work and to bring it all together. But in bringing it together, it has to respect those roots. Because without the roots, people will feel no legitimacy. Without the roots, all of us would be ready to try to burn the house down. And not realizing, no, we have to save the house from burning itself down. The Muslims have to save America from itself. And if we don't stand up as one unified community and go out and address this racism, this income inequality, this history of pitting one group against another, while that clique, that plutocracy, as Dr. Cornel West calls it, not an oligarchy, a plutocracy, laughs all the way to the bank. If we don't challenge the military-industrial complex, we're going to have more Gazas. But Gaza is the tip of a nasty iceberg. The Palestinians, the Zionists have killed 15,000 Palestinian children. We killed 1 million in Iraq. And all those corpses can be laid at the feet of the military-industrial complex at the end of the day, at the feet of Wall Street, and how money is laundered and money flows, at the feet of the banks, at the feet of the educational system that talked about freedom of speech, right? until these students started talking about freedom for Palestine. And just like Malcolm was talking about freedom for black folks, there wasn't no freedom of speech for Malcolm at UC Berkeley.
Yeah.
Just as no freedom of speech for those young people setting up those camps at UC Berkeley. The institutions, the educational institution, the media, may Allah give us the strength to come together and create alternative institutions.
Amin.
May Allah give us that strength.
Amen.
And may Allah bless us to bring the third resurrection to fruition.
Amin.
وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.